Thank you, everyone, for joining. I'm positively surprised that there's so many of you. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. When I submitted this session, I was trying to make this a rant about what you're going to see, so you're in for a treat, kind of. My name is Ben. I'm from Nuremberg, Germany, running a small consultancy firm there. Been active in the community for the past couple of years. I just recently started a podcast with my good friend Jess Pomfret. So good that all of you are here. You are all invited. It's called Finding Data Friends. We're on YouTube. And every single week, except this week, because you're all here, nobody would listen, we are meeting new friends that we're introducing from the data platform community. So if you want to be on the podcast, any of you, chat to Jess or I, and we're more than happy to have you there. I want to say thank you, not just for all of you for showing up, to the people watching us online, but also to the sponsors, to the volunteers, to our helpers, the organizers, everybody that is making this happen. I'm very glad we are back to actual in-person thingies. I was slightly getting tired of just talking to my computer after 2 years, to be honest, not knowing if anybody is listening. All right, Synapse Link for SQL Server. What is Synapse Link for SQL Server? Well, what it will do is it will link data that is in your on-prem SQL, well, technically it doesn't have to be on-prem, but that's the major use case, into a Synapse workspace. And it does that by making use of a self-hosted integration runtime. If you're using ADF, for example, you might be used to that. It's a small piece of software that is running on your on-prem SQL Server that basically connects it to the Azure endpoint. So Azure can talk back to your SQL Server and actually read data out of there. Not just SQL Server, but in that case. Then you're going to have an ADLS, an Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 landing zone, which is not the default storage of your Synapse workspace. So if you've deployed your Synapse workspace, and by the way, since this is a 20-minute session, I'm not going to talk much about the foundations of Synapse because there's just no time. So if some of that, I'm just running away from you, I'm sorry for that. This is not your default storage, so you're adding an extra piece of storage to that. I don't know why, don't ask me. It has to be like this. You need to have a dedicated SQL pool. So it's not cheap. Sorry. And from there, it will then pump your data from your SQL Server into that dedicated SQL pool. Not all of your data, but what you will do is, I'm going to say, I want to have these two tables, and these two tables will then show up automatically in Synapse in near real time. Sounds amazing, right? You don't write SSIS packages, you don't write anything in ADF, you don't worry about scheduling. It will just instantly and automatically push all that data from source on-prem to your data lake, to your Synapse, dedicated but still. So you're going to have a real-time access to your data, which you can then run your analytical workloads on. So it is intended as a near real-time ETL replacement. It does not use any of the existing technologies that you might think of, like CDC or anything like that. It's an entirely new process. It's not transactional replication. It's nothing like that. It is an entirely newly developed algorithm, product, feature, whatever you want to call it, that takes care of these change detections. There are some restrictions. Some teeny tiny restrictions. Anyone from the product group here? No? Okay. Data type restrictions. You can't have text, you can't have XML, you can't have any user-defined data types. What will happen is it will replicate that table just without these columns. And we're going to use AdventureWorks today. This is fun because they use user-defined for everything. So we're going to have a person table, but we're going to have no idea who that person is because the name is user-defined, so it's not going to come over. Great for GDPR. You cannot have replication or MI link enabled on your SQL Server. Another major restriction, if you ask me. You cannot use any add, drop, or alter statements on your source tables. I mean, what you can do is you stop the replication to Synapse, you make the modifications, and then you reinitialize the table. That's something you can do. But you cannot just say, well, I made a change to the table. Make sure that change also flows over into Synapse. And, You can truncate your tables, you can do partition switches, which may not be that common in an OLTP source anyway, but still, depending on what it is you're replicating, this may or may not be hurtful. There's a much longer list. I think this is an amazingly great concept. I think these restrictions make it hardly usable for a lot of use cases at this point. However, what it also says on that link down here is that these are things that are being worked on. So just because these features or these restrictions apply today does not mean all of them will still apply tomorrow and going forward. All right, let's try this out. Live demos in Azure, what could possibly go wrong? I did some... hang on. What could possibly go wrong? There we go, PowerPoint. Most excellent. Cool. I did some pre-deployment. I pre-deployed my Azure Synapse workspace and all that because that would take about 15 minutes. I think we're about 5 minutes in, so we would get to the deployment of Synapse by the end of the session without having deployed anything meaningful. I have provided that entire script on my GitHub, and you're going to get the link at the end, so you can try that out yourself. Basically what I did is I created a resource group, including that storage account, added a container in that storage account, created my workspace, created my dedicated SQL pool, did what's best practice because I had no idea which IP address I would be coming from. I created a firewall rule to allow any IP address to access this SQL endpoint. Again, what could possibly go wrong? Nothing, because I have a super secret password. No one's going to hack this. I then paused my pool after deploying this because I'm cheap. And there we go. Oh, and by the way, that is something you can definitely take out of that session. People tell me I'm old school because I love VB and other tools and all like that. There's a new SQL CMD, which is now on GitHub. It's based on the Go language, and it does so many super cool things. And if you've used tools like kubectl, for example, it follows a very similar, it has all the backward compatibility. You can still do SQL CMD -s, -u, whatnot. But that new syntax is so much cooler. And you can actually work with different contexts, and that's what we're going to do here in a sec. So first thing we're going to do is make sure our AdventureWorks database has an owner, and make sure it has a master key. It needs to have a master key because when that stuff flows over from SQL to Synapse, there's some encryption happening for security reasons. It needs to encrypt using that key. And using my password, I can now create a new context in SQL CMD. So if I do SQL CMD get context, I now have my Windows server and Synapse. And since Synapse has just been added as the last one, that's my new context. I can now switch between these two servers as if I were in SSMS. So for those of you working a lot on the command line, this is super cool, if you ask me. Again, we create a master key on there as well. Oh, and what's also super cool, with that new context, I could do this. SQL CMD open ADS, which will fire up Azure Data Studio with exactly that connection that I've just created in SQL CMD. So nothing to worry about there as well. Yeah, I don't have time for a survey right now, sorry. Anyways, so if you may not be starting using Synapse Link today, maybe take a look at the Go-based SQL CMD because I think it is super, super cool. Switching back to my Windows server here, as we can tell, cool. All right. What we need to do to make Synapse Link work is our a linked service to our storage, so that new storage. A linked service to our SQL server, for that we need the integration runtime, and then the Synapse Link. So, if I go to my resource groups, let me zoom in a bit on that. Go to my Synapse workspace, open my Synapse Studio. So we're going to have one link connection here on integrate. We're going to do a link connection to, not an Azure SQL, well, to our SQL Server, but we can't do that yet, sorry. See, that's what happens when you do live demos. I'm sorry. So we're doing a new linked service to our data lake. Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. We've already created that. So in my subscription, it will find my BenBit Synapse storage account name and create this. So now we got the pointer where it will actually write to, which is one of the reasons why I don't get where you need dedicated, because it will write this into files in that ADLS. Why can't I use serverless to consume the data in there? The answer is probably because serverless is so much cheaper. We're going to need an integration runtime. It will be a self-hosted integration runtime because I'm running this on my own on-prem environment. And for that integration runtime, I'm going to call that SQL IR. You need to download a little tool for the actual runtime. You install it. There's the link right there. It's also in the script. And then you're going to need a key. So I'm copying that key and go to my Windows server where I already installed that tool because it also takes about 2 minutes. Register my runtime. So what's now happening is my on-prem server is starting to talk to the Azure portal, meaning, hey, here I am. You can now start talking to me. Will Synapse Link support Oracle as a source? If yes, when? Well, just while this is deploying, taking that question from online, I guess. I don't know, but if it would be an entirely different product. There's Synapse Link for all kinds of data sources. It's not just Synapse Link for SQL Server. So Microsoft would have to make a Synapse Link for Oracle. If or when this is going to happen, I'm going to lean, but this is just me thinking probably not, but you never know. So another linked service to our SQL Server. We need to provide the server name. We need to provide the and we need for the IR to fit. There we go. That is correct. Thank you. Testing our connection. Cool. Okay, now we got both parts. We got the link to our on-prem part. We got the link into the storage part where Synapse Link will actually write that data. So now we can go to integrate and say we want a new link connection. Source type will be a SQL Server. And this will give me all the tables from my source here. So we're going to say salesperson, person password, person, why not? My target pool will be my link pool. I only have one, so that makes things easy. It's going to ask me where I'm going to put this. There's only one folder in there, so that's also making things easy. So you could potentially use multiple of those writing into different folders. Come on. And that's why you don't do live demos. Seriously? Bummer. We're going to try this again in 2 minutes because this is Azure after all, so who knows. I'm still at least going to finish this story. What would be the last step going to happen is it would give me a list of all the tables that I've selected. It would give me the destination table. So what I could do is change the destination schema because, for example, I do not have the person.person schema in my I do not have the person schema in my target database. I could create all these schemas or just be like, you know what, I'm going to have one target schema. That's where everything goes. I might use prefixes, etc. Let me just try one thing here real quick while I'm talking. And this will also give me all the warnings. So, okay, this table is potentially too wide. This table has columns that you're not going to get to see, and all this. So let me just try. Enabled from all networks sounds like it is not an access issue, so. Okay, no luck here. You initialize the link, there is one big play button at the top, so it is hard to miss. And then it takes somewhere between what I've experienced a couple of seconds to a couple of minutes for it to actually initialize. How long it takes to actually load the first time of data depends on how much data you're loading. For that AdventureWorks thingy, that's instantly, because especially if you're doing the person table, I mean, that's like 20,000 rows. One other thing that I wanted to show you is another issue that I want to point out. If you run big bulk updates on your source database, it reinitializes your destination table. And it does that without encapsulating in a transaction. You say update last name equals Wiseman on person.person. Synapse is smart enough to be like, okay, every single record has changed, rather than doing like merge statements and whatever. We're just going to reload that entire table. If you keep hitting F5 on that destination table, you will see it's going to be empty for a couple of seconds. It's not going to be locked, it's going to be empty. That might be an issue depending on what you're running on that workload. So again, is Synapse Link for SQL Server a chargeable service? Yes, because you got to use Synapse. So the Synapse Link itself does not come with any additional cost. However, you're licensing your SQL Server and you're paying for the Synapse workloads that you're running. And again, it's a dedicated pool. So yes, there is. While there is no immediate charge for it, there is an indirect charge, I would say. Sorry for. I did not expect the ADLS to be the issue in that demo, to be quite honest. Anyways, like I said, if you go to that link up there, bookmark.ws/synapse, that will take you right into that repo on my GitHub where that PowerShell thingy is. All my contact details are up there. I would very much appreciate your feedback on this session. Leave out the feedback on the demos not working. I'm aware of that. Just imagine they did. And with that, if you have any more questions, feel free to either come up front, shout them at me, put them in the app. And otherwise, I want to say thank you very much, all of you, for coming, and I hope you have a great rest of your day and your conference.